Okay, today we move on to 9-2 quadratic functions. Today we're going to be graphing some quadratic functions. So up here at the top you can see I have the quadratic function in standard form. So we're going to look at a portion of the quadratic formula that allows us to find the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry is that line, that symmetrical line of your parabola. So we will be taking the x value equals negative b divided by 2a. So all you'll need to do is to select your a value and your b value and put it into this formula and substitute it and then simplify. Now, one thing I've pointed out here is that I really want you to notice that this negative sign is part of that formula. So let's take a look at an example. Since the vertex lies on the axis of symmetry, that x-coordinate of the vertex is this part of that formula. So that's why you're always seeing x is equal to negative b divided by 2a. So let's take a look at an example, and things will probably fall into place then. What is the equation of the axis of symmetry and the coordinates of the vertex of this particular graph? So here we have our quadratic function right here. I have laid out that this first term is your a value, b value, and c value. Now a little reminder here that our c value is our y-intercept, where our parabola is going to cross our y-axis. And that's really important to note for a little later when you're graphing. So here we have our axis of symmetry formula. We're going to plug in our a value, which is 3, and our b value, which is 6. So right here you can see instead of b, I've placed the 6. My 2 is part of the formula, and my a value is a 3. Notice that negative sign is still there. Then all I have to do is simplify. That 6 stays there. 2 times 3 is 6. Negative 6 divided by 6 is negative 1. So we've quickly found that x value, which also happens to represent the x-coordinate of the vertex. So how do we find the y value? Well, we're going to do that by taking that x value and substituting it back into the original equation. So here's the original equation from the previous slide. We're going to substitute that x value in those two spots there. Then really it's just a matter of following order of operations. Now a little reminder here. You always find that exponent value first. So negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. And then I've left everything else here. I simplified this. 6 times negative 1 is negative 6. Then when we only have addition and subtraction left, we just move from left to right. 3 subtract 6 is negative 3. Negative 3 minus 4 is negative 7. And that is our y-coordinate. So now we have our axis of symmetry is always the x value, negative 1. The coordinates of the vertex are, there's that x value again, and the y value. And this must always remain as a coordinate, so you should be putting that vertex in parentheses. Now to go about graphing a quadratic function, this is a new example so we could kind of follow it from beginning to end. We're using the equation of the axis of symmetry, then we're finding the vertex, then we're graphing. So let's take a look at this one. So we're going to start with the formula for axis of symmetry. And you can see that there. Here again, here's my original formula right here, 2x squared minus 4x plus 1. I'm going to take my a value, which is a 2, my b value, which is negative 4. I'm only going to use this formula to plug those in and then simplify, and I get the x value being a positive 1. Over here, I take that original formula again, and I plug in the x value, and I simplify and I get negative 1. So I quickly found the vertex. Remember that x value is also my axis of symmetry. So as I graph the axis of symmetry and the vertex, I always want to start with that. So here you can see I've plotted positive 1, negative 1. That is my vertex. Now when you're using the Math Excel software, you want to graph that point first, and you also want to select the parabola that moves either upward or downward. Now remember, you should know what that is based on your a value. Since this one was positive, I know that this is going to be a smiley face or an upward shaped parabola. To find other points on the parabola, you could make yourself a little table like we've done many times in the past like this, and you can come up with small values of x to determine what the y value would be. So right here you can see that in their example, they made x equal to 0. So when you plug that into that original formula for x, you simplify, you get 0 squared is 0, 0 times 2 is 0, subtract 4 times 0 is also 0, and then plus 1. So your y value ends up being 1. So you can quickly graph 0, positive 1, and you see them doing that. They also used a negative value, which I always suggest is a good idea as well, so that you can see how your parabola is going to shape up. So they did that here and simplified. Remember, you always got to do exponents first. Negative 1 times negative 1 is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. Subtract. Negative 4 times negative 1 ends up being plus 4. So 2 plus 4 then is 6, plus 1 more is 7. So the y value ends up being a 7. So they graphed that coordinate, negative 1, positive 7 right there. So these 2 points are just a reflection over that axis of symmetry on the other side to get this nice smooth curve on the other side. So you can see that axis of symmetry right here divides it right up the center. Now when you're using Math Excel, they only require you to graph the vertex and then one other point, and then they will automatically produce the graph. So that's kind of nice, but if you were doing it on your own on graph paper, you would have to reflect these points over. So you can see that they're all the same distance away from the axis of symmetry, like this would be another point. This is 2 units away from the axis of symmetry, so on the other side it's 2 units away, and that would be the other point. So they're completely reflected. So for your homework then, you're going to do a combination of 9-1 and 9-2 in Math Excel. It's only one assignment with a total of 10 questions. So use your notes and the help button as you need to. And a little reminder here, always find that vertex first when you're graphing it and select the U-shaped parabola either upward or downward to actually graph that point. Then you can plot additional points before checking your answer. The other thing I noticed when I did the online homework is that when it asked me for the axis of symmetry, which is the x-coordinate, you can't just type in, say, 2 if that's your axis of symmetry. They actually want you to type in x is equal to and then a 2. Sometimes they'll actually type this in for you, so then you can just do the number. But if you're like, well, why did I miss that question? It might be because you didn't type in x equals 2. I know that's silly, but I made the same mistake when I did the online homework. Okay, so that's it. And since this will be your assignment then on Wednesday, you will have until Friday to get that done. We have online, we have that planning day on Friday, so you actually have the day off this coming Friday. Okay, hope all is well. Take care.